Now for Global Business Updates, Rotus Udiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Begin in the U.S., and I continue to say, diversify your portfolio and expand. The U.S. stock market hitting new highs yesterday. It's very interesting. When Donald Trump used to be on Twitter, he was always reminding everybody how well the stock market was performing. I think you can count on 3 fingers the number of times Biden has even mentioned the stock market on Twitter, if at all. S&P 500 hitting an new all-time high for the 38th time so far this year. What we're seeing is a rotation out of some of the mega cap stocks, the Magnificent Seven, if you will, from the Apples, the Teslas, the Microsofts, and so on, into smaller cap stocks, right? And that's stocks with a smaller capitalization. The Russell 2000, for instance, which represents a lot of these smaller stocks, also hit a high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average hitting a high not seen since June or so of 2023. So stocks doing very well, and particularly for myself, I worked in the US for a number of years. I have a 401k retirement account, part of which is exposed to the stock market. They give you these forms to fill when you start working, asking you about your risk tolerance. I chose a very conservative portfolio because I was afraid of losing money. If I decided to be more adventurous, probably I had a 401k that would be much bigger, but it looks pretty good right now. So for folks in the US, retirement accounts that have an exposure to the equity market, they're all smiling. Let's get to technology now. Just to clear up some things up, the tech CEOs, Sundar Pichai of Google, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, Tim Cook of Apple, none of them have endorsed Donald Trump. I mean, they did come out condemning the shooting that happened, but none of them have endorsed him for president, just to be clear. Now, Apple is up 26% year to date. It closed up 0.18%. It is part of the Magnificent Seven. Apple put out, and a shout out to one of our, in fact, I have to shout him out, I think Engineer Philip, that pointed this out to me early this morning, around 3-4 a.m. They have a new ad that focuses, it's a very clever ad that focuses on privacy with Safari. Take a look. All right, so by the way, I don't use Safari. I still use Google Chrome, but Apple essentially telling people that Safari is a whole lot safer. Now let's get to J.D. Vance, who of course has been the talk of the town since he was appointed as, of course, the running mate for former President Trump. I think he watches Arise News. I'm not being serious here because, there was a lot of focus also on social media on the fact that Elon Musk has highlighted endorsed the ticket, congratulated Vance on being picked as a VP candidate for Trump. But we highlighted his electric vehicle legislation, which wants to move tax credits from EVs over to fossil fuel cars. So I don't know, somehow it was brought up at the convention. Here is J.D. Vance praising Elon Musk's innovation.
Look, Elon and I know each other a little bit, but Elon is actually a great example of an American entrepreneur who's built a company, but also a company that's employed a lot of good American workers. If you think about, Elon Musk is in some ways a throwback to an older generation of American entrepreneur. He builds real things. He builds cars. He builds rockets. And that's, I think, the kind of economy that President Trump wants to create.
And that's a message for us here at home. Innovation is how you create jobs. So, there's a message there. But you just had Adefemi Akisa with a report on President Biden's NAACP, the National Advancement for Colored People discussion, particularly for minorities. Not sure how many of you are aware of a guy called Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, just to give you a short history, is a white supremacist podcaster. He was banned from Twitter back in 2023, January, under the Jack Dorsey administration, if you want to call it that. Under Elon Musk and his free speech absolutism, he reinstated Nick Fuentes back on the platform in May of this year. The guy has a pretty big following. He is a former supporter of Trump, although I hear that there's some issues there. But for those that don't know, again, this is still on J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is married to an Indian woman, and he has a son called Vivek. So just to tell you about the challenges that the Republican Party and the right wing are going to have with the underbelly, the white supremacist underbelly, listen to what Nick Fuentes had to say about J.D. Vance.
It's like, who is this guy really? Do we really expect that the guy who has an Indian wife and named their kid Vivek is going to support white identity? Like, there's a white genocide going on in the world. White people are being systematically replaced in America and Europe through immigration and to a much lesser extent due to intermarrying. This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity? If he does, it's going to be no better than any of these other civic nationalists like Vivek Ramaswamy. How else could you countenance American identity if you have a mixed up family like that?
And don't forget, if we tie this back to the press release that came out on Friday, this was highlighted by the EU Commission on the violation of X of the Digital Services Act. So you can expect all this to be rolled into the court cases when Elon Musk faces off with the EU, and also as the campaign goes forward. The Republican Party still has an issue with diversity. Now, still on Trump, technology. Now, I think I've talked to our folks to probably play this 2 or 3 times. There's been a computer simulation that has been released on the trajectory of the bullets that almost, in fact, it hit Trump but grazed his ear. We might need to look at this maybe 2 or 3 times. Do pay attention to the moment that Trump turns his head and also watch the computer simulation. It's pretty incredible stuff.
Look what happened. Take a look what happened.
When you see that, it's been trending on social media. It's incredibly scary when you see how close Donald Trump came to losing his life. Just to round off, UK inflation released early this morning from the Office of National Statistics. 2% for June, no movement from May. The forecast was for it to come down slightly to 1%. Does that mean that the Bank of England will hold its gunpowder and not cut rates? We'll have to see what happens with the next meeting. And then Nigeria, of course, the IMF in its latest outlook, still maintaining Nigeria's 3% trajectory, initially saying that Nigeria will grow by 3.3% in 2024, downgrading that just a bit to 3.1. 2025 saying Nigeria will maintain growth at 3%, talking about cash transfers to the poor for vulnerability, highlighting inflation, the normal stuff that the IMF talks about whenever it brings out its reports.
Well, it never solves our problems. This monetary tightening never solves the problem. We also what it did in Britain. All the other austerity measure never solved the problem. It never solves our problem. We must be thinking more as regards growth. And the Bretton Woods institution would never think about growth of our country here than other, African nations. That's why Julius Nyerere was fun to have said of them that they are the International Ministry of Finance. They want to police everybody, but they never think about growth. I think it's obvious and it's very clear that Elon Musk's idea of free speech is hate speech. Look at people like Nick Fuente. What has it got to do that he married an Indian woman? How has this got to do with the love of his life? And that's why even with the Trump shooting, which I truly condemn, a lot of people keep saying that Trump is the biggest purveyor of hate. And we have seen it. The other day, I took out time to read that Heritage Foundation's document, over 900 pages, about full-on Christian nationalism. And it doesn't all go well for America. America is a mixed nation. Nobody can originally say they own the land. Even Trump himself is from Karlstadt in Germany. He's an immigrant himself. So I think it's just time for them to temper all of this down. And Rotus, it's not today that the Republicans have always kicked against new energy. They've always kicked against electric cars. Just go back to the 2012 debate when Mitt Romney was mocking Barack Obama for investing in this same Elon Musk and Tesla back in the days. The Republicans, President Reagan, mocked Barack Obama. But today, who is laughing? Obama is laughing now because you can see how Tesla is doing.
All right, with regards to hate speech, X, like you mentioned, with Nick Fuentes' outburst, and it has been shared a number of times on X, it would definitely make a strong case for strengthening or perhaps tightening more regulation on hate speech on the platform, especially at a time where we are, following the video you just showed, following the almost hit on former President Donald Trump and the impact of rhetorics like this and how it can then turn into violence physically. It's a big conversation. In the UK, it's a no platform stance for far right wingers like this. No platform, absolutely. You won't get this kind of airtime anywhere else. So it's interesting that when we have platforms like X, which isn't closely regulated, you can actually jump on there. People from about 16 years old and above can watch such filth, such vitriol coming in from a man like that. So really, really important again, and perhaps even highlights the importance of then holding X to account to see that yes, you want to promote free speech, but to what extent and at what price are you willing to promote that? And then talking about the, very quickly, I was going to talk about the interesting ad, by the way, by Apple, but I'll have to yield the floor at this point.
Okay, very quickly, IMF says Nigeria, we've been downgraded from 3.3% growth to 3.1%. But the projection for next year, GDP growth, they've remained consistent in that regard for about 3%. And for the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, they are projecting about 4.1% for 2024, 4.2% for next year. Well, these are still very small projections. Nigeria needs double-digit growth for us to be able to make any difference at all. And as for the tightening policy that they are praising, well, we, the people of Nigeria, we are not seeing the effect. And two, they are talking about conditional cash transfers as a way of addressing the plight of the poor. Only yesterday, we were talking about how that particular idea has been mismanaged by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. But it was not only Nigeria that or Sub-Saharan Africa that World Bank looked at in their 2024 latest outlook report. India and China, according to them, according to Guatanchas, who signed the report, is going to account for half of the growth in the year 2024, with India projected to grow as much as about 7% in 2024, the biggest, fastest growing economy in the world. And China is put at 5%, for this year, which is lower than the 5.2% that China recorded in 2023. But generally, global growth is going to stagnate, but not in China, not in India. In Europe, projection of about 1.2% growth. In the UK, about 2.4% growth. But the other issue is Parliament in England sits today and back from recess. And the fear is that Labour Party that had a 139 or is it 135-page campaign manifesto. There are issues in that manifesto that Sir Keir Starmer and his members in that 650 Parliament, where they have 412 seats, will begin to push through. And this will include their plan to raise about £9.4 billion within the next few years. And they have promised that will include slashing of tax holidays, that will include raising taxes for the wealthy, And that will include a number of other measures. What will be the implications of this for private equity? Private equity companies were doing well in Britain when, despite their exit from the European Union. But that is going to be affected. And the concern is that many private equity companies are going to start exiting from London, and they are likely to go in the direction of Italy, where there is a flat tax regime and where there is a much friendlier business environment, even if Labour says that it is pro-business and pro-growth. But after the King's speech today, we'll see what key aspects of all these proposals by Labour will be on the table.